I wanted to get on here and share my birth experience. I remember being pregnant and I would see so many stories. And so I wanted to share my experience, especially because it ended up being a hospital birth, even though that is not what I originally planned. I did not want to go to the hospital. I was trying to do everything I could to avoid going to the hospital. But that's where I ended up. But I wanted to share a positive experience. When I first found out I was pregnant, I knew I wanted an unmedicated birth and I knew I wanted to birth in a birth center. And so I started on the search of finding a birth center. Now, Atlanta does not have a whole lot of birth centers. At the time, it was only one, and that's ABC, Atlanta Birth Center. And one that was in the process of opening up, and it was a Black owned birth center. And so that's where I started receiving my care. At the time, we thought the birth center side was going to be open for me to give birth. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And so I ended up having to switch care at 36 weeks pregnant. And that's how I ended up at Atlanta Birth Center. Fast forward about a week before my daughter was due, I went and received an ultrasound, and they had informed me that my daughter was measuring small. Now, if you know anything about giving birth at a birth center, you have to be low risk, and that's just for safety precautions. So, if you have any pre existing health issues or current health issues, more than likely you aren't able to give birth at the birthing center. And so I was low risk all the way up until this 1 week. I think my daughter was at the like 6th percentile or 4. Either way, she was below 10. And so a week before I was supposed to give birth, like I was, yeah, actually I think I was 38 weeks at the time. I was 38 weeks. They had informed me that I would have to go to the hospital to give birth. As disappointing as this was in the beginning, because ABC is partnered with Grady, I was allowed to have my midwife. That whole time I was there, I did not see not one doctor. Now, the nurses were there to monitor me and check on baby and everything, but I did not see not one. Now, if you are from the Atlanta area or familiar with Atlanta, if you've heard of Grady, you know that Grady gets a bad rep. Like, and I hadn't even heard about the labor and delivery, but they're known to be a trauma hospital. If you get shot, car accident, major trauma, Grady is the place where you want to be. So I wasn't really sure what that experience was going to be like. And I already was not sure about having a hospital birth. I immediately went into just education mode. Like I researched as much as I possibly could. I asked as many questions as I could. And I just tried to gain as much knowledge as I could before going into the hospital. I remember like just like once again reminding myself like, "Ugh, just stay open minded. Like what are you gonna do?" Like I wasn't brave enough to like birth at home. So I just knew like, okay, this is where I'm at with it. Like I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. Well, I didn't have to go with it, but I chose to go with it. Let's be clear. I chose to go with it because they always reassured me that whatever it was that I wanted to do, I could do. But they also let me know the risk and everything that I was, taking. So I chose to give birth at Grady. I chose to be induced. I have my notes here. Let me make sure I'm on top of it. 5 days before my baby was due. Yeah, because she was due on that Friday. I had her on Tuesday, but we went into the hospital on Monday to be induced. I was 1 centimeter at the time. This is where the intervention started to take place. I knew I didn't want to start with like any medication. So I started with the Foley bowl. It's just a balloon little thing that they put in, they pump it up. It helps to dilate you. And so by the time the balloon came out, I was about 4.5, 5 centimeters. Then they started with the Pitocin. Now, I already knew that if I was going to get Pitocin, I no longer wanted to have a medicated birth, or unmedicated birth. And that's because I had heard stories about getting Pitocin. I knew that like Pitocin is like a synthetic oxytocin. And so I knew at that point my body was not acting off like its natural flow. At that point, we are introducing other things that are outside of what my body would produce. And so I knew that once we started introducing things that was not natural, I was no longer like sold on having an unmedicated birth. With the Pitocin, if you didn't know, you do have control over how much you get. And so I started with the lowest dose I possibly could get. I was good. I didn't really feel nothing at this time. We got in at Monday at like 10, 11 a.m. We started the Pitocin maybe around like that night, that evening, around 6 or 7 in the evening. And so we were good. I'm good. I'm rocking, I'm rolling, I'm laying in bed, I'm watching TV. I don't feel a thing. And so they're like, Mama, do you want to bump it up? I'm like, sure. This was not like an experience where I did not have any say. They would ask me, what do you want to do? The nurses would come in, my midwife would come in. What do you want to do? How do you feel? And so I was like, I don't really feel anything. And not only that, but of course, I wasn't really dilating past like 4.5, 5. So I was like, okay, we can bump it up. We can bump it up. And so they would check every single time I wanted to bump it up. We got up to about 7. By this time, it is 9 a.m. the next morning, Tuesday, and I'm up at a 7. Contractions were like on and off. I would feel something, they would go. I would feel something, they would go. Then my water broke. After my water broke, yeah, it was go time. Okay. Things started happening quickly. And I started feeling those contractions. It just hit me. That water broke and it's like immediately contractions back to back. Like they were probably 2 or 3 minutes apart. They were getting intense back to back. And another reason why I just knew I really wasn't adamant about having a medicated birth while I was at the hospital is because they have you on monitors. So I was hooked up to monitors. I couldn't really move the way I wanted to move, and I couldn't get in the water. And so I'm like, I'm just sitting there taking contractions. Kind of, I could stand up, but I couldn't really walk around. So I was like, yeah, I would like to get the epidural. I got the epidural, and another thing about the epidural is like it wasn't one of those strong epidurals. You can decide the amount of medicine that you want with the epidural. And so once I got the epidural, I got back in bed and I could still feel my contractions. Like it did not numb me, and I did not want to be numb because when I had my son, I was so numb that when I was pushing, I couldn't really feel anything. This time, I wasn't super numb. I could push the button if I wanted more medicine, but I did not do that. I just kind of sat there. It took the edge off, but I could still feel everything. Things went really quickly. Like maybe 45 minutes after I got the epidural, I started to feel her in my butt area. And so my doula had let me know, like, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel like pressure in your bottom. And sure enough, I started to feel pressure in my bottom. I called the nurse. She said, yes, baby's head is right there. You are ready to give birth. I had my nurse there. I had my partner there. I had my midwife there. They asked me if I wanted to have a student. And I was like, yeah, I'm okay with that. And so I had a student there. And that was it. And it was still a very intimate, sacred experience for me. My midwife allowed me to feel my contractions and push at my own pace. It was no purple pushing. I pushed for maybe like 30 to 40 minutes, and baby was out. I did not have any complications. Bleeding was minimal. We were able to do the delayed cord clamping for about 15, 20 minutes. They showed me like my placenta. And if you know anything about midwifery, it is very mother led. It is like a holistic way of giving birth. And so while I didn't have my birth center birth experience, I still had what I feel was as close as possible given the circumstances. I was in a hospital. But I feel like anytime a mother is allowed to speak her mind and say no and go at her own pace, to me is, a win. And so I feel like Grady is really doing a good job with like allowing the midwives to birth there, and staying as holistic as possible when it comes to like a hospital birth. Yeah. I mean, I think that was everything. My baby came out. She was healthy. She was good. She was 6 pounds, 6 ounces. I wasn't worried at all when I found out that she was measuring small because I feel like I have small babies. My son was 6 pounds, 12 ounces. And so I just feel like I'm meant to have small babies. So I wasn't concerned about her. But like I said, when you're giving birth at the birth center, they have their own rules and regulations that you have to follow. But it turned out to be a beautiful, beautiful birth. If you are a mother who's weary about giving birth in a hospital, like I would say educate yourself as much as possible. I attended many of many birth classes. I read a lot of books, one being Spiritual Midwifery. I prepared and educated myself as much as possible, and know that you still have a voice. You can still use your voice. You can say no, if something doesn't feel comfortable for you. I had an amazing doula. All the midwives at ABC were great, and I had a great partner. So throughout all of this, throughout all the changes, and the last minute things that would pop up, I can honestly say that like my partner made the experience one that I enjoyed because he was still so supportive. He allowed me to do what I felt comfortable with. So yeah, if y'all have any questions, let me know. Like I said, I'm hoping that I'm not like forgetting anything. But yeah. So shout out to Grady. I don't feel like Grady get their flowers, especially for the labor and delivery floor.